The ancient halls of the Galactic Confederation had never felt so cold. Admiral Vortak shifted in his massive throne, his four muscular arms drumming against the metal armrests as the holographic message played again. Around him, representatives from 50 different worlds watched in uncomfortable silence. The being in the hologram was nothing like the solid, familiar forms of the council members. It flickered like starlight, sometimes appearing as pure energy, sometimes taking a vaguely humanoid shape. This was a precursor, one of the mysterious race that had ruled the galaxy millions of years ago before vanishing without explanation. The species called humans will exceed all known limits, the ethereal voice repeated, each word seeming to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. Contain them now or face consequences beyond calculation. This is not a request. This is a final warning. The message ended, leaving the great chamber in heavy silence. Admiral Vortak was the first to break it with a sound that resembled laughter but carried no humor, more like the grinding of broken machinery. Humans, he spat, his yellow eyes gleaming with contempt. Those pathetic little creatures who only learned to leave their home planet a few decades ago? He stood up, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. The great precursors are worried about beings who still use chemical propulsion and metal bullets? General Thaxon, Vortak's chief strategist, activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of human technology. I have personally reviewed their capabilities, council members. Their fastest ships barely reach half light speed. Their weapons are crude projectiles that would bounce off our basic shields. Their largest warships are smaller than our transport vessels. Chancellor Vex, the elected leader of the Confederation, studied the data with his 6 eyes. His species had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years, and in all that time he had never seen the Council dismiss a precursor warning. But the evidence seemed clear. Show us their military strength, Vex requested. The hologram changed to display Earth's defense fleet, a handful of small ships orbiting their home world, with a few scattered outposts on nearby planets. The entire human military could fit inside a single Zephyrian battle cruiser. 53 active warships, Thaxon reported with obvious amusement. Their largest vessel carries fewer than 2,000 crew members. Our smallest patrol fleet could conquer their entire species in a matter of days. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Rakthian delegate, her scaled skin shimmering under the chamber lights, spoke up. Perhaps the precursors have been isolated too long. They may not understand how weak these humans truly are. Admiral Vortak nodded approvingly. Exactly. The precursors disappeared before humans even discovered fire. They know nothing of current galactic politics or military capabilities. But not everyone was convinced. Ambassador Kalax of the Peaceful Meridian Union raised one of his tentacles. The precursors have never been wrong before. In all recorded history, every warning they gave proved accurate. Should we not at least consider? Consider what? Vortak interrupted, his voice booming across the chamber. That these primitive apes who only recently learned to split atoms pose a threat to our 1,000-year empire? That creatures who communicate through sound waves and live less than a century could somehow challenge civilizations that have mastered space and time. The Admiral activated his own display, showing the vast expanse of the Zephyrian Empire. Thousands of star systems, millions of worlds, billions of ships. We control 1/3 of this galaxy. Our technology is derived from precursor ruins that these humans could not even comprehend. Our warriors have conquered species far more advanced than anything Earth has ever produced. Chancellor Vex looked around the chamber, gauging the mood of the delegates. The warning troubled him, but the evidence was overwhelming. Humans appeared to be nothing more than another primitive species, perhaps slightly more curious than most, but certainly not dangerous. What do you propose, Admiral? Vex asked. Vortak's 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of confidence. Standard integration protocol. We make contact, offer them the choice to join the Empire peacefully, and when they refuse, as they always do initially, we demonstrate our superiority with a minor show of force. They surrender, become a tributary species, and we gain access to their system's resources. And if they resist more than expected? Asked the Meridian ambassador. Then we treat them like any other stubborn species, Thaxon replied coldly. Complete military occupation until they accept their place in the galactic order. Based on their technology, resistance should last no more than a few weeks. The vote was unanimous. Even the usually cautious Meridian Union agreed that the human threat seemed negligible. The precursor warning was filed away as an interesting anomaly, the first known error in millions of years of otherwise perfect predictions. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, None of them noticed the strange energy signature lingering where the precursor message had appeared. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, carrying within it something that might have been regret, or perhaps pity. The signature faded just as Admiral Vortak was giving his final orders to prepare for human contact. In his certainty, in his complete dismissal of the ancient warning, he had just made the greatest military miscalculation in galactic history. The precursors had tried to warn them. Now the galaxy would learn why some limits should never be tested, and why some species should never be underestimated. Captain Jinwoo Kim stood quietly on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the massive alien ship through the main viewport. The vessel was enormous, easily 50 times larger than his own ship. Its dark metal hull was covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. Weapon ports lined its sides like the eyes of some ancient predator. "Captain," said Communications Officer Hygiene Park, her voice tense. "I'm receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. They're speaking in perfect Korean somehow." Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was deep and harsh, like metal scraping against stone. "Primitive vessel, you will power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Your species will be integrated into the Zephyrian Empire as tributaries. Resistance will result in the destruction of your homeworld." The bridge fell silent. Jinwoo looked at his executive officer, Commander Dong-hyun Lee, who simply shrugged. They had prepared for this possibility, first contact with a hostile alien species. "Hygiene, open a channel," Jinwoo ordered calmly. "Channel open, Captain." Jinwoo spoke clearly and politely. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Kim of the United Earthship Harmony. We appreciate making contact with your civilization. However, we must decline your offer of integration. We propose instead that we meet as equals and discuss peaceful relations between our peoples." The response was immediate and violent. Bright beams of energy lashed out from the alien ship, striking the Harmony's shields. The entire vessel shook under the impact. "Shields at 60%, shouted Engineer So-young Choi from her position at the engineering station. "These weapons are more powerful than anything we've seen before." But something unexpected happened. Instead of ordering retreat or surrender, Captain Kim began giving orders that surprised even his own crew. "Dong-hyun, begin evasive pattern Delta 7. So-young, I need you to analyze those energy beams while we move. Tactical, prepare to record everything about their weapons and ship design." Lieutenant Byung-ho Nam at the tactical station looked confused. "Sir, record what? We should be running or surrendering." "We should be learning," Jinwoo replied firmly. "Every shot they fire teaches us something new about their technology." The Harmony began moving in ways that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The human vessel twisted and rolled through space, dodging the massive energy beams by mere meters. But more than that, it was changing its defense patterns with each attack. Aboard the alien dreadnought Conquest, Admiral Vortak watched in growing confusion. His bridge crew was reporting impossible readings. "Admiral," said his weapons officer, "the human vessel is modifying its shield frequency. It's matching our weapon output somehow." "That's impossible," Vortak growled. "Their technology is primitive. They can't adapt that quickly." But the evidence was right in front of him. With each attack, the human ship's shields became more effective. What had started as devastating hits were now barely scratching the smaller vessel's defenses. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "they're scanning us. Somehow their primitive sensors are penetrating our stealth systems." On the Harmony, So-young Choi was working frantically at her station. "Captain, I'm reading incredible things. Their hull is made from some kind of super-dense metal I've never seen. Their energy weapons work on a completely different principle than ours. And their power source, it's like a miniature star inside their ship." "Can you replicate any of it?" asked Dong-hyun. "Give me a few hours with this data, and I think I can modify our shields to be twice as effective," So-young replied excitedly. "Maybe more." Jinwoo smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped for. "Byung-ho, are you recording their attack patterns?" "Yes, sir. I'm also detecting at least 12 other ships nearby, all using similar technology. Their formation tactics are interesting, very rigid and predictable." The alien attacks continued for several more minutes, but something had changed. The human ship was no longer just dodging, it was anticipating where the next shots would come from and moving out of the way before they were even fired. Admiral Vortak was becoming frustrated. "How are they doing this? Our battle computers should be able to predict their movements easily." "Sir," his tactical officer reported nervously, "I think they're predicting our movements instead. They seem to have learned our attack patterns." Just then, something even more surprising happened. The human ship stopped running and turned to face the massive alien dreadnought directly. "What are they doing?" Vorthak demanded. His communications officer looked up with fear in his multiple eyes. "Admiral, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're sending technical data about our ships, our weapons, even our shield configurations. And there's a message." "What message?" The officer's voice shook. "It says, 'We know who you are now. We know how your technology works. We know your weaknesses. We are no longer afraid.'" Admiral Vorthak stared at the small human vessel in disbelief. In less than 1 hour of combat, these primitive beings had learned more about Zephyrian technology than most species learned in decades of study. They had adapted their defenses in real time and somehow turned a hopeless battle into something resembling an equal fight. For the first time since the encounter began, Admiral Vorthak felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest: uncertainty. Dr. Jaehyun Shin walked through the massive asteroid facility that had once been a simple mining station. Now it buzzed with activity as hundreds of human scientists and engineers worked around the clock. The air hummed with the sound of welding torches, computer terminals, and excited conversations in dozens of languages. "Minho, show me what your team has accomplished," Jaehyun said to his lead engineer, who was standing next to a sleek spacecraft that looked nothing like the boxy human ships of 6 months ago. Engineer Minho grinned proudly and patted the hull of the prototype vessel. "We didn't just copy their plasma drive technology, Doctor. We made it better. Much better." "How much better?" Jaehyun asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer from Minho's excited expression. 40% more efficient than the Zephyrian original," Minho replied. "They were using raw power to force plasma through their engines. We figured out how to guide it more smoothly. Less energy wasted, more speed achieved." Jaehyun nodded approvingly. This was exactly what he had hoped for when he first saw the alien technology. Humans had always been good at taking existing ideas and making them work better. "The weapons systems?" he asked. "Even more impressive," said Minho, leading him to another section of the hangar. "Their energy weapons were powerful but clumsy. We've created focused beam weapons that use half the power but cause twice the damage. And wait until you see what we did with their shield technology." They stopped in front of a testing area where a small drone was being bombarded with energy beams. The translucent barrier around it flickered and shifted, but held firm. "Adaptive shields," Minho explained. "They automatically adjust to incoming attacks. The more someone shoots at them, the stronger they become against that specific weapon type." Jaehyun was amazed but not surprised. Human engineers had always excelled at improvement and adaptation. What took other species decades to perfect, humans could often enhance in months. "What about our diplomatic efforts?" Jaehyun asked. Diplomat Eun Ji-han approached them, carrying a tablet filled with data. "The results are better than we hoped, Doctor. 37 species have joined our coalition in just 6 months. 37? Jaehyun was genuinely shocked. "How did we convince so many so quickly?" Eunji smiled. "We offered them something the Zephyrians never did: partnership instead of slavery. Most of these species have been forced to serve the Empire for centuries. When we showed them that resistance was possible, and that we were willing to share our technology freely, they were eager to join us." She activated her tablet, showing a map of the galaxy with friendly systems marked in blue. "The Karathi were the first to join after we helped them free 3 of their colony worlds. The Veltans followed when we shared our improved shield technology with them. Each success brings more species to our side." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the war was going very differently than the Zephyrians had expected. Commander Taemin Kong stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his fleet prepared to attack the heavily fortified Zephyrian world of Nexus Prime. "Are all ships ready?" he asked his tactical officer. "Yes, sir. The converted cargo haulers are in position. Mining ships have been equipped with the new plasma torpedoes. Even our transport vessels now carry shield generators." This was the human way of war. Nothing was wasted, everything could be adapted. Old cargo ships became aircraft carriers. Mining equipment was turned into powerful weapons. Even civilian vessels could now fight alongside military ships. "Begin the attack," Taemin ordered. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The human fleet didn't attack in the straight lines and predictable patterns that galactic warfare had used for thousands of years. Instead, they moved like a swarm of insects, each ship following seemingly random paths that somehow worked together perfectly. The Zephyrian defenders were completely confused. Their battle computers couldn't predict where the human ships would go next. Their weapons couldn't target vessels that moved in such chaotic patterns. And worst of all, every time they thought they understood the human tactics, the humans changed them. "Sir," reported a panicked Zephyrian officer to the planet's defense commander. "The human ships are using our own communication frequencies against us. They're somehow jamming our coordination systems while keeping their own ships perfectly organized." The defense commander watched in horror as his impenetrable planetary shields flickered and died under the assault of human weapons that seemed to target their exact weak points. "How do they know our shield frequencies?" he demanded. "I don't know, sir. It's like they can see into our computer systems." Back at Zephyrian Command Headquarters, General Thaxon was giving his report to an increasingly worried Confederation Council. The holographic display showed battle after battle where human forces had achieved impossible victories. "Council members," Thaxon said grimly, "we are not fighting a normal war. These humans don't just fight us, they study us. Every battle teaches them something new about our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses." Admiral Vortak slammed his four fists on his throne. "How can primitives learn so quickly?" "They're not primitives anymore," Thaxon replied quietly. "Every day they become more advanced. Every victory brings them new technology, new allies, new capabilities. At this rate, they'll surpass our technology within a year." The council chamber fell silent as the terrible truth became clear. The humans weren't just fighting a war, they were evolving at an impossible speed, becoming stronger with each battle. The precursor warning was beginning to make sense. The Battle of Kepler Station began like any other engagement in the war between humans and the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Vortak positioned his massive fleet around the strategic space station, confident that his superior numbers and firepower would finally crush the human resistance once and for all. "Deploy all battle groups," Vortak commanded from his flagship's bridge. "These humans have been lucky so far, but today their luck ends." His tactical display showed over 200 Zephyrian warships surrounding barely 50 human vessels. The odds seemed impossible to overcome, even for the surprisingly adaptive humans. But something was different about the human ships. They moved strangely through space, seeming to flicker like candle flames in a breeze. The usual solid outlines of spacecraft wavered and shifted in ways that made Vortak's eyes hurt to watch. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The first volley of Zephyrian plasma beams lanced out toward the human fleet. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy realized that humans had stopped following the rules of reality. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, voice filled with panic. "Our weapons are passing right through their ships. It's like they're not really there." Vortak stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The energy beams that should have destroyed the human vessels were hitting empty space, even though the ships appeared to be directly in the path of fire. "That's impossible," he growled. "Run a full diagnostic on our weapons systems." "Weapons systems are functioning perfectly, Admiral," came the reply. "The problem is with the human ships themselves. Our sensors show they're there, but our weapons can't touch them." Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship Infinite, Dr. Unicio Park watched her incredible creation work exactly as she had designed it. For months, she had been studying reports of Zephyrian technology, looking for ways to gain an advantage. What she discovered changed everything. "Captain Ji-hoon," she reported to the ship's commander, "the dimensional phase generators are working perfectly. We exist in normal space and hyperspace at the same time. Their weapons can only target objects that exist in one dimension or the other." Captain Ji-hoon nodded, though he still didn't fully understand the science behind what his ship was doing. "And we can still fire at them?" "Yes. Our weapons are designed to work in both dimensions simultaneously. We can hit them, but they cannot hit us." The human fleet began its counterattack, and the results were devastating for the Zephyrians. Energy beams and missiles appeared from nowhere, striking Zephyrian ships that had no way to defend themselves. It was like fighting ghosts that could touch the physical world but could not be touched in return. But the humans weren't finished demonstrating their new capabilities. Dr. Park had been working on something even more incredible than dimensional phasing technology. "Captain," she said, pointing to the massive star that dominated the Kepler system, "are you ready to see what we can really do?" Ji-hoon looked at the star, then back at the scientist. "You're not serious about the stellar manipulation project?" "Completely serious. We've learned how to focus stellar energy and direct it anywhere in the system. Think of the star as the galaxy's largest energy weapon, and we just figured out how to aim it." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Vortak was trying to understand what his sensors were telling him. "The star is doing what?" he demanded. His science officer, a creature with 6 eyes and blue skin, trembled as he gave his report. Admiral, the star's energy output is being focused and directed. The humans have somehow learned to control stellar radiation and turn it into a weapon. That's scientifically impossible. Vorthak roared. Stars cannot be controlled by technology. Sir, look at the display, the officer replied weakly. Vorthak turned to see something that violated every law of physics he had ever learned. A beam of pure stellar energy, brighter than anything in the galaxy, was streaming from the star toward his fleet. But instead of destroying everything in its path, the beam was somehow calibrated to disable ships without killing their crews. All vessels, this is the human flagship Infinite, came a calm voice over the communication system. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Never. Vorthak shouted back. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to primitives. Then you will face the consequences, replied Captain Jihoon's voice. We have tried to be merciful, but you leave us no choice. What happened next was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The focused stellar beam swept across the Zephyrian fleet like a lighthouse beam, but instead of destroying ships, it did something far more terrifying. It completely drained their power systems. One by one, the massive Zephyrian warships went dark, floating helplessly in space. How? Whispered Admiral Vorthak as his own flagship's lights dimmed and failed. How can they control a star? Dr. Park's voice came over the communication system, speaking directly to the defeated admiral. We learned by studying your own technology and pushing it beyond what you thought possible. You use fusion reactors. We learned to use entire stars. You have energy shields. We learned to exist between dimensions. You follow the rules of physics. We learned to rewrite them. As rescue ships approached the disabled Zephyrian vessels, Admiral Vorthak finally understood the precursor warning. Humans didn't just exceed the limits of technology, they refused to believe that limits existed at all. Every time someone told them something was impossible, they found a way to make it work. The galaxy would never be the same. The great throne room of the former Zephyrian Empire had never seen anything like this before. For 1,000 years, conquered leaders had been dragged here in chains to kneel before the Emperor and beg for their lives. Now, Admiral Vorthak found himself kneeling voluntarily before a small group of humans, expecting the same fate his people had given to countless others. But what happened next shocked him to his core. Please stand up, Admiral, said President Sun Mi-young, her voice gentle but firm. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to work with you. Vorthak slowly rose to his feet, his forearms trembling slightly. Around him, the throne room was filled with representatives from dozens of species, many of them former enemies of both humans and Zephyrians. Yet they all sat together peacefully. I do not understand, Vorthak said quietly. We attacked your people. We tried to enslave your entire species. Why do you show mercy? Sunmi smiled warmly. Because we learned something important during this war. Fighting and conquering others doesn't make anyone stronger. Working together does. The transformation that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Within just 1 year, the massive Zephyrian Empire crumbled, but not through destruction. Instead, it evolved into something completely new, the Cooperative Alliance of Worlds. Species that had been slaves for centuries suddenly found themselves equal partners. The Karathi, who had been forced to mine dangerous crystals for the Empire, were now leading research into new energy sources. The Veltans, once used as expendable soldiers, became the Alliance's best diplomatic negotiators. Even former Zephyrian military officers found new roles as advisors and teachers. Dr. Hyunwoo Seo stood before the Alliance Council, presenting humanity's latest breakthrough. Behind him, a holographic display showed a swirling portal of energy that seemed to bend space itself. Council members, he announced proudly, we have successfully created stable wormholes. What used to take months of travel through space can now be accomplished in a matter of days. The various alien representatives gasped and chattered excitedly among themselves. Faster-than-light travel had always been limited by the need for special fuel and specific routes through space. But this new technology would allow instant travel to anywhere in the galaxy. How did you achieve this? Asked Chancellor Vex, the former Confederation leader who now served as the Alliance's science advisor. We studied the natural wormholes that exist near black holes, Dr. Seo explained. Instead of trying to force our way through space like most faster-than-light technology does, we learned to fold space itself. We convinced the universe to bring distant places closer together. Former General Thaxon, who had once been humanity's greatest enemy, shook his head in amazement. In just 2 years, you have advanced our entire civilization by centuries. I have studied warfare and technology for over 500 years, and I have never seen progress like this. How do you do it? Captain Sujin Beck, who had become one of the Alliance's top scientists, smiled at the question. The secret is simple, General. We refuse to believe that anything is impossible. When someone tells us that something cannot be done, we ask, why not? When they give us reasons, we find ways around those reasons. But surely there must be limits, protested a Rakthian delegate. The laws of physics, the nature of reality itself, these things cannot be changed. Can't they? Sujin asked. A few years ago, everyone said that controlling a star was impossible. We learned to do it. They said existing in multiple dimensions was impossible. We figured out how. Every time someone tells us about a limit, we discover it's just a challenge waiting to be solved. The most remarkable moment came when the ancient precursors made contact once again. This time their message was not a warning but something entirely different. The same ethereal being that had warned the Confederation about humanity now appeared before the Alliance Council. But instead of the urgent tone from before, the precursor seemed almost proud. Greetings, children of Earth, the energy being communicated directly into their minds. We come not to warn but to congratulate. You have achieved what we ourselves once achieved long ago. President Sunmi stepped forward. What do you mean? Millions of years ago we were like the old Confederation, bound by rules, limited by conventional thinking, afraid to push beyond what we thought was possible. Then we encountered another species, one that refused to accept any limitations. They taught us that the universe has no real limits except those we create in our own minds. The precursor's form shimmered with what might have been happiness. That species eventually transcended physical existence and moved beyond this galaxy. We became their successors, watching and waiting for the next species to break free from artificial limitations. You are that species. What happened to the species that taught you? Asked Dr. Seo. They became something greater than physical beings. They became pure possibility, exploring realities beyond anything we can imagine. And now you begin the same journey. As the precursor's message ended, the Alliance Council sat in stunned silence. They were not just rebuilding civilization, they were evolving it into something entirely new. President Sunmi looked around at the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds and species. Together they had already accomplished the impossible. Together they would continue to push the boundaries of what was possible. The galaxy stretched out before them, full of mysteries waiting to be solved, limits waiting to be exceeded, and possibilities that had no end. And humanity had taught them all the most important lesson of all. There were no limits except those they chose to accept.